Hello, everyone, and welcome to the I Am Love Builders show. We are your hosts, Casper and Cheryl Stockham, and we'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to our show and to give a great big shout out to all of our broadcast partners. Here at I Am Love Builders, our show is totally devoted to all things dealing with relationships and communication. Whether you are married or single, our goal is for you to be an MVP, which is the most valuable partner
Yep.
in your relationship. And remember, if you're not having fun, you're
You're
not
not doing
doing
it
it right.
right. No doubt about that. We got a great guest we're going to be introducing to you in just a second. But I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, I Am Love Builders. So Cheryl and I wrote a book called Divorce Proofing Your Marriage. It is on the hot new release list on Amazon. We have a free ebook you can grab from our website, and that's iamlovebuilders.com. I forgot to put that up on the screen. And we have some free training that we do twice a month. And we also have a most valuable partner club. It's a exclusive club that you have to sign up to, but it's a great place for you to go if you're married or single. You can join the club, and we can help you with your relationship challenges. We have free workshops that we put on, and we also are doing a casting call for a TV show that's going to air later this year. We already have 2 or 3 couples signed up, but we need 6 total. So if you know of any couples, energetic and dynamic couples that want to join us on TV, please let us know. All right. So without further ado, we're going to bring in our guest. Well, he's already here with us. He's being silent right now, but we're bringing Ernest. And Ernest James, he has a program called Deal, Heal, and Fulfill. And his website is dealhealandfulfill.org. And we did an interview with Ernest maybe a month or so ago. And we had a great time on your show. So we decided to bring you on our show so we could continue that conversation. So welcome to the show, Ernest.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. I almost, out of habit, I almost did the intro to my show.
That's why I was thinking I should have taken you off stage because I know you like to talk. So.
Yeah, I almost did my welcome, but I'm
Yeah.
definitely happy to be here. Thank you guys, first of all, for being on my show podcast, should I say, which is
Yeah.
the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where you guys are on
Yeah.
as my guests, and so I
Yeah.
definitely appreciate you guys being on, and I also appreciate you guys having me on. And as you said, I like to talk. And so it's always good to be on this side of the mic because all I got to do is talk. So always good.
Amen, amen. So tell our audience who you are and kind of give us your background.
All right. To everyone, my name is Ernest James. I am a speaker, a podcaster, and an author. And my mission is to help people to deal, heal, and fulfill, to deal with your problems, to heal from the pain, and to fulfill your purpose. So at my core, I'm just a person that loves people and love to help people. So pretty much everything that I do in some way or fashion is connected to helping somebody. Through the podcast, I have several podcasts, but through the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, my guest and I have discussions about healing in every area of our lives. Mm-hmm. So I talk about things that I've been through, my divorce, depression, suicide ideations, and all of those things. And for the things that I haven't been through, then I bring on other guests and coaches and authors to come on and to talk about those things, and also to give information to my listeners on how those that are dealing with those issues, how they can overcome and come out. And so at my core, that's who I am, just a person that loves people. And so I try to do what I can to help people, in some type of way every day.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Very
Yeah.
good.
Hey, folks, if you're listening live on our Facebook group, our podcast, you can chime in on the conversation. If you have a question for Cheryl and I or Ernest, definitely let us know. It should pop up on our screen, and we'll get to your question for sure. All right, so let's kick this into gear here. So with all those things that you mentioned, how did it come about to where because a lot of times a lot of us go through pains and challenges to kind of, and we grow out of those pains and challenges, you know, to get to another level, right? To get to where we can deal with it, heal, and then fulfill, right? So what are some of the things that you went through in order to, you know, get you to the point to where you needed to?
You decided you wanted to do a podcast and share with people.
Yeah. So actually, that goes into, I guess it would be a continuation from the conversation that we had on my podcast, because my journey into podcasting and sort of everything that I do now kind of came from my divorce. Right. And so, like I said, I wish I had met you guys a couple of years ago. I might not be divorced, but I am twice divorced. Right. And my first marriage, I hoped would last. Right. But my second marriage, I expected to last. And due to different circumstances, they didn't. Right. But going through after my second divorce, going through, I was, not only was I getting divorced, but I also was going through a transition period. Some may call it a midlife crisis, you know, but I was kind of in that space, you know. All our kids was pretty much grown. My daughter, who was the baby of the bunch, just turned 21 like last weekend. You know, don't have any little kids. You know, and so I was at this space of also at that time too. I was a minister. I was a executive pastor of a church we had started, and that had been in existence for 10 years. And so when COVID came, that kind of shut the church down, you know, because of all of that stuff. So I found myself in this space where I'm no longer ministering because the church is shut down. I'm still a father, but not necessarily fathering because all my kids are grown. You know? And also I'm not married anymore because now I just went through a divorce. And so I found myself in this space of, who am I? You know what I mean? Who am I and what do I want to bring to the world? You know, in this season, you know, I was a father, I was a pastor, I was a husband, but now I'm none of those things, or at least not in the same version that I was.
Right.
And so I'm going through this transition of trying to figure that out. Like, who am I now? And so one of the things that I realized going through my divorce, I started looking back at my dating history, and I realized that every woman I've ever dated was a fatherless daughter. And so when I came to that realization, I was like, well, for whatever reason, I'm attracted to them or they're attracted to me, but we keep coming in contact with each other. And so I said, well, what can I do? Again, being the person that wants to help, what can I do to help this community that I'm connected to? And so I started a page on Instagram called Friends to Fatherless Daughters. And I would go on there and just give my advice as a father, number one, of a daughter, as a girl dad, then as a friend, you know, whatever, just as a man, to fatherless daughters and to those who was raising fatherless daughters from a man's perspective of some things that would help. And I started doing that. I probably was doing that for a couple months. And then I got a phone call where I got a DM and a young lady asked me, hey, I like what you're doing. Would you like to be on my podcast? Okay. I had never been on a podcast. I heard of podcasts, but didn't know much about it. I was like, all right. You know, and then her podcast was only audio, so it didn't even have video to it. But I said, okay, cool, I'll do it. And I did it. And after I did that one, I got maybe about 5 or 6 more invitations for different podcasts to be on. And so I was like, all right, cool. So I started doing them. And so what I ended up doing, I ended up going to Texas, and one of the hosts of one of the podcasts that I was on lived in Texas. So when I went there, I met with him for lunch. And we met up, and so we just having lunch and we have a discussion. And out of that discussion, he was like, you know what? I think you need to have your own podcast. And I said, well, okay, you know, I think about it again. I didn't know much about podcasting at that time. And so I looked into it and started to, you know, see what it was all about, and was very intrigued by it. And fast forward to the Deal to Heal with E. James podcast, where we are now on like 130 episodes recorded. And also my second podcast, which is the Girl Dad Discussions podcast, where we talk to other girl dads like myself and daughters to talk about the relationship of the daddy-daughter relationship in order to combat the narrative of the fatherless daughter and the absent father. And so that's kind of in a nutshell how everything came to this point where we're here now.
All right. Well, that's perfect timing because we're going to take a quick break. If you're watching live, it's just going to be a few seconds. But if you're watching through podcast later, it might be a minute or so for our sponsors. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back with Mr. Ernest James. Hold on. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to I Am Love Builders with Casper and Cheryl, and we're excited that you're here with us. We have a very special guest that we're interviewing, and Mr. Ernest James. He has a podcast talking about deal, heal, and fulfill, and we're going to get into those topics, Ernest, because we want to know. When I hear deal, I hear or just deal with it, right? And people would say, yeah, but you don't understand what I've gone through. I can't just let it go. I can't just deal with it. I've got to, people like to, misery loves company. So people want to pull you into it, right? They call you up and say, man, you believe what she said or what he said? And they pull you into it. And Cheryl and I today are like, yeah, you're going to leave that drama with you. I don't even want to deal with it, right? I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with your issues, right? So when you talk about deal, what does that look like to you?
Well, I think when I say deal, I mean, number one, acknowledge it, whatever it is. Whatever it is that you're dealing with, whatever it is that you're going through, acknowledge it. Because a lot of times that's like the first step, because people don't even want to acknowledge that they have a problem. Right. They don't even want to acknowledge that, they're in a situation that they can't control and that they have no idea what's going on, with this situation. So the first thing I would like to say when dealing with it is, first of all, acknowledge that there is an issue that needs to be addressed. And then second of all, address it from the facts of it, not from the feelings of it, right? So a lot of times we get caught up in the feelings of how things make us feel, how this situation make us feel, how this person made me feel, how something that was said made me feel. But our feelings change from moment to moment. So if we're walking in our feelings, then we're always be impacted some kind of way, and mostly negative, because we can't control it, and our emotions is always going back and forth. But if we deal with the facts of the situation, whatever it is, then we're more able to address it accordingly, because the facts don't change. The truth don't change. Whatever that's honest and true is going to be honest and true, no matter how we feel about it. So even if I don't like it, I still have to accept it and address it accordingly, because it's not going to change just because I don't like it. Because if it's the truth, then it's just going to be the truth. And so when I say deal with it, we're acknowledging it first, then acknowledging it from the facts, and then also addressing it in a way or dealing with it in a way that is positive, and in a way that you can work through it to get over it, not just living with things. That's sort of like especially nowadays, they have a medication for everything, but they don't cure anything. Right. It's like, we're not going to cure it, because then you won't need me. But we'll give you this medicine that'll help you live with whatever you got going on. But that's not what I want you to do. I want you to deal with it. I want you to address it. I want you to break it down to, however you need to break it down in order to heal from that situation. And so it starts with the dealing with it and addressing it. And that's when I say, just dealing with it means actually bringing it up, and looking at it and saying, okay, what can I do to fix this issue?
Yeah, it's similar to when we talk with couples, we talk to them about issues and hidden issues and things going on and conflicts they have right in their marriage or relationship. And a lot of times the couples we talk to, they wind up, maybe they get into a fight, but they never resolve the issue. They just kind of fight for a while, and they separate, and they come back together. But the issue is still there, right? Because they haven't solved it. They haven't dealt with it. Right. And it just kind of goes under the rug, or it goes into the corner until the next issue. And then they bring up
the old issue, the new issue, and any potential issue. It just
Right.
explodes at that point. It's just all over the board. And then a lot of couples, when they get to that point where they can settle down, even if it's just before divorce or if it's after divorce, they didn't realize, I don't even know what we were really what
Yeah.
was the real core as to why we couldn't get along,
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what you said. It's a lot of it is when we don't address things in a timely manner,
Right.
then we're left with the emotions of the issue and not necessarily the issue itself. So that's why couples and not just couples, but people that's dealing with anything after so long, they don't even know why they were mad. They just know they was mad. You know what I mean? I don't even know why I'm not talking to you, but something happened and I stopped talking to you a year ago, so I'm just gonna not talk to you. Right?
Yeah.
Because you didn't address the issue. So now you're left with the emotion and you don't even know what the issue is.
Yeah.
And so I'm sorry about that. So one of the things that happened, because you don't address the issues, then you forget what the issue is. Then now you're left with the emotion. And so when the next issue comes, you forget what that is because you didn't address it. Then you're left with the emotions of that. So at the end of the day, you're left with all of these emotions that you don't even know what the root of them were. But now you have so much emotion. It's like, all right, now I just had enough. I'm tired now. I'm hurt now. I'm upset now. Now it's time for a divorce. But if you had dealt with the issues as they were coming, then you would have realized that, all right, it really wasn't that serious, And that's unfortunate, like you guys said. A lot of times it's in the after the divorce when you actually things is done, things is settled, you separated and going your own ways, and now you're sitting at home by yourself and you start thinking about it, and it's just like it really wasn't that serious.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like I ended my marriage for something that really I could have worked through. Like we could have actually worked through it if we addressed it, accordingly, and if we addressed it timely.
And Ernest, I like your deal, heal, and fulfill, not only for relationships, but even before couples get into a relationship. When you're single, there's a lot of things just as a single person, the way you grew up, the culture you grew up in, your history, what type of trauma your parents and grandparents had that passed down to you, that we as single people should deal, heal, and learn what the fulfillment is before we walk down that aisle and say, I do.
Right.
Yeah. And that definitely played a major part in my life. Because again, every woman I've ever dated was a fatherless daughter, right? But I was raised in a 2-parent household, right? And my parents was raised in a 2-parent household. And so I've come from a generation of 2-parent households, or generations going back. But the women I've dated generally come from generations of single mothers, generations of fatherlessness. And so those two dynamics, when you put them together, there's a whole lot of differences, just in upbringing, just in the way your household was ran, just in the way that you learned to communicate with the opposite sex. Because if your mother was bitter, then every interaction that you have with a male is not going to be good because your example wasn't good. You know what I mean? So those things that played a part in your upbringing, you know what I'm saying? How, like you said, how you were raised, that all plays a part in who you is while you're still single. So if you can work through those things before you get in, not even get married, before you get into a relationship, you know what I mean? And get those things fixed and kind of, learn how to deal with them and heal from them, then you can fulfill your vows, fulfill your desires inside of the relationship that you want to have, inside of the life that you want to have, even on we talk personal goals and development, all of that plays a part. And so if you're able to heal, once you've dealt with your issues, once you heal from your issues, then you can fulfill all your heart's desires without having to worry about those old things coming back up. Because if you don't heal from them, if you press them down and don't deal with them, they're coming back. It's all coming back up.
I totally agree with you.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're here with Ernest James, and he is Mr. Deal, Heal, and Fulfill. You can check him out at his website, dealhealfulfill.org. We're going to take another quick break here. If you are watching live, it's just going to be for a few seconds, and we're going to come back with Mr. Ernest James, and we're going to get into heal now. We're going to talk about heal when we come back. We'll be right back. All right, we are back at Casper Cheryl Stockham with I Am Love Builders. And we're just excited to have you guys with us. We have a special guest in studio with us today, Ernest James. He is Mr. I'm calling him Mr. Deal, Heal, and Fulfill. Hopefully he doesn't mind that. But, you know, we talked about deal, and now we're going to move into heal because, you know, you have to heal to move forward, right? So I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are like, Ernest, Casper, Cheryl, you guys don't get it. I've been hurt badly. I've been, you know, by a family member, by a husband or a wife or friend, somebody I thought was my friend, and they stabbed me in the back. Or, you know, how does someone heal from those type of things?
And I want to add to that, Ernest, because this brings me to a conversation. Yesterday, I had a couple of my sisters, my Kingdom sisters, come over, and we were just having a good fellowship. And one of the things that we were talking about in relation to this is that we were talking about some of the young people that that were in they were little kids, and now they're like in their 30s now. And we were just kind of like, oh, so-and-so's doing this now. Oh, she's grown up and she's done. But we found that some of them were in situations that was like, I really like, oh my, how did they get there? And we ended up praying for them. But these two were women who were fatherless. And we came to the conclusion that based on their behavior and the decisions that they have made for their lives, which has them in situations that are not the best, is that they were fatherless. They didn't have a father or a father figure. And the bottom was that they were searching for love. They want to be loved. And there was no man, mature man in their lives, a father, to show them who they were, give them their identity, and how to be loved.
Yeah. And you know what, that plays a big part in it, especially when we talking about the fatherless daughters. So before I go to that specifically, let me start by saying with the healing part, the main thing that we have to do, I would say, start with the serenity prayer, right? So the serenity prayer, I'm sure all of us know, and I might not be able to say it verbatim, but it's Lord, help me to see the things that accept the things that I cannot change.
Change those things
that I can't. Thank you. And
I have the wisdom to know the difference.
Yeah. And so I would say that's where we want to start, right? So when we're addressing our issues, again, we're talking about dealing, you know, accepting it, addressing it. All right, let's get to it. So now that we're in the healing phase of it is, okay, let me acknowledge where I stand with this. What part of this can control? What part of this do I have, you know, control over? Because I tell people all the time, when you're dealing with anything, and especially in relationships, the only thing you can control is yourself.
Right.
You can't control the other person. You can't control, you know, their reactions. You can't control none of that. All you can control is yourself. Right. And so when addressing and working into the healing part of whatever you're dealing with, what can I do to address these issues that I can heal from it? Right. And so the first thing I want to say is, you know, you have to get into community, because you can't do it by yourself. Right. And most of us weren't hurt by ourselves. We generally was hurt by someone else. Right. So it wasn't something that we did to ourselves. And even those things that we did to ourselves is usually as a reaction to something from something else. Right. So our issues that we're having to heal from were not just only self-inflicted. So that's not going to only be healed by self, right? It's going to take a community. So the first thing you need to do is find a community of like-minded people. Find a community of people who have been through what you're going through. A community of people who understand. So then you don't have to have those conversations with those people who don't understand, right? So like, I'm going through this and you don't understand what I'm going through. Well, that means you need to find someone who does understand, so that you're able to have a conversation that leads to your healing, and not just venting or not just spinning hurt on other people, because hurt people, you know? And so, but going back to what you were saying with the fatherless daughters, I actually wrote an ebook called The Four Core, and I'm gonna show it to you guys right now for those that's watching. It's an ebook. It's called The Four Core, which is the 4 core values that every daughter should get from her father. Right. And so I wrote that ebook as I was going through this transition of trying to see how I could help the fatherless daughter space. And so what I realized was fatherless daughters a lot of times doesn't have those values, again, that you mentioned, that is poured into them from their father. And so they grow up looking for those things.
That's
and so the core four values that I believe that every daughter should get from her father at its core. Definitely more than this list, but I think at its core it should start here, which is guidance, affirmation, love and affection, and protection.
Yes.
Right. And so when you don't have those things, a lot of times our daughters grow up looking for it, right, in other places and other people, because they don't have it within themselves, because the father whose job it was to pour into them those values.
Correct.
They didn't get it because he was absent. And so a lot of times I'm usually talking to adult fatherless daughters. And there's a statistic that says most fatherless children, whether it's a fatherless son or a fatherless daughter, will give birth to fatherless children. And so that's how we see the generation after generation after generation. So a lot of times when I'm talking to the fatherless daughters, they're generally adult fatherless daughters who by that time sometimes have their own fatherless daughters now. And so I like to talk to them about, again, when you mentioned about them not having the mentorship or the father figures in their lives. And what I say to them is, first of all, I want you to look back, and I ask them, what generation of fatherlessness are you? Right? Are you a first generation, or was your mother fatherless also? Was your grandmother fatherless? Was her mother fatherless? Right? And so when they take the time and look back how many generations of fatherlessness is in their bloodline, then my follow-up question is, well, how many are going to come after you? Or will you do something to change it so that it doesn't continue? And so what I mean by that is the father, the biological father of your child may not be around, but that doesn't mean you cannot find a father figure to stand up in the life of that child, to still be able to pour into her or him, if it's a boy, those values that the father is supposed to give. And a lot of times people say, well, I can't find them. They all over the place, right? If you start looking into it, especially with the internet now, you can type in mentorship and a whole list will come up, And so I'm a part of some of those spaces. So I know that they exist. You know what I'm saying? And so, but as the mother, you have to take acknowledgement and take, the initiative to say, I'm going to make sure this stops with me. So maybe if that means me sucking up my pride and going to the father of my child to mend that relationship, not necessarily for us, but so that they can have a relationship, then I'm going to do that. If that's not possible, then now I'm going to look for other father figures to be active in the life of my child, to still give them those father values. So that can be an uncle, that can be a brother, a big brother, that can be an older cousin. And if not in the family, then you can look for, and I always say, look for people that's already in position to lead. So those are your teachers, those are your professors, those are your pastors, those are the ministers, those are coaches, those guys or men that's already in position, that's already doing that work. They're already taking out time with kids. They're already, lending their voices and being those father figures. And because they're already in that position, it's just a matter of you connecting your child in those spaces with those men that is already doing the work that they can pour into your children. But as mothers, sometimes we have to take that initiative,
Also, Ernest, I would say that it would, as a woman, it would cause you to want to. We'll give me for a break.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll propose that after we get after the break.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. We are here with Mr. Ernest James, and you are listening to I Am Love Builders show. If you're watching live, it's just going to be a few seconds. If you're watching later, it might be a minute or so, but we'll be right back with Mr. James here in just a moment. All right, we are back with Ernest James. This is Casper and Cheryl with I Am Love Builders Show. We are getting into some really interesting topics because a lot of folks are going through these different phases or stages in their healing and in their challenges that they're having out there with relationships and everything else. You know, we talked about deal, we talked about heal. In fact, we were in the healing phase, and you had a question for Ernest.
Yeah, I was thinking, Ernest, in relation to what we're talking about and what you just said, I also feel as a woman, it would cause me to definitely go through the healing stage so that I, as a woman, when I involve myself in the next relationship, that I would pick a different type of man than maybe I had gotten into a cycle of choosing. A man who wasn't really mature, who didn't understand what it meant to be a father, who didn't really understand what it meant to be a son because he probably was fatherless too,
Right.
or came from an abusive situation. So you know now how valuable it is to have a husband or wife in your life who's going to impress on your children. And I think we get into these relationships and we end up getting pregnant and having kids by people who we later find we didn't like, can't get along with, don't know how to communicate with. They got the same issues we got. It's all compounded. And then the people who pick up the tab for all that is our children.
Yeah.
So, I would say to women, I say, knowing that, be more selective about the men you let into your life.
Yeah. I have a situation where I have daughters, but I didn't get the opportunity to raise my daughters because I wanted to be in their lives, and they know me now, and I'm in their lives now that they're older. In fact, we're really tight now, but I wasn't able to be in their lives because their moms kept me away from them. Right. So in that situation, they needed me. I wanted to be there for them, but I couldn't. I wasn't physically allowed to be there.
And that's another, for me, I believe, an issue where heal comes into play. We as women, as mothers, husbands, boys, we need to get our healing so that we can clear the air and make good decisions. Not only that's going to impact us, but it's going to impact our children as well. And sometimes, Ernest, I think we forget that. We just float into these relationships. We don't have no plan, no goal. She's cute, she's cute. Oh wow, this is, the sex is good. Ooh, and then the babies come up and what?
And that's 100% right, because we don't get the healing that we need, right, from a relationship.
Right.
And so I always say, number one, start with yourself, right? Start with yourself, even before you start talking about the kids, because like you said, your decisions is going to impact the children. So if you can pick a good father, should I say, then you might not be able to pick a good mentor either. Right. You know what I mean? Because you're coming from your own point of view. And so especially if you see a track of the same type of person over and over again that you're attracting, right? And so if you're getting the same, no matter what relationships you've been in, you're getting the same type of person over and over again, then you got to stop and start going, okay, what is it about me that is attracting this type of guy? You know what I mean? What is it about me that is attracting this type of woman? And what do I need to change about myself first so that I'm not attracting those type of people, and also fixing what it is that's in me that's attracted to those type of people, because I already figured out that's not working for me. Exactly. Right? I don't have to have how many divorces or relationships I got to go through before I realize, you know what, this person is not good for me. So I need to change my picker, right? I need to fix my picker. My picker is broken.
I had that 21 years ago. My picker was definitely broken, and I cried out to God. So another challenge, and we need to get into the fulfill here because this is our last segment. But another challenge is, especially if you're talking about young women and mentoring men, that dynamic is very tricky, right? Because especially if they're not there, even the natural father is tricky, but being a not non-family member kind of thing.
Yeah.
That has to be the right male because he could potentially take advantage of that female. So anyway,
Yeah.
a lot of challenges there.
But that's why I say start with people that's already in the position, because
Right.
if they're already in the position, they already have a track record. They already
And
have
hopefully have
people
been
that trust
vetted.
them.
Yeah.
Right. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So if it's, let's just say a coach, you know,
Yeah.
a coach of a team, or let's just say a mentor that's a part of a mentorship organization.
Yeah.
Usually that organization has their own vetting process,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And then depending on how long they've been with that mentor organization, there'll be other kids that they've worked with, you know, other parents that have
Sure.
left their children and there's these people control, should I say, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So as a mother, you can look at that and say, okay, let me check out this organization, let me check out this guy, and then you can see the other mothers and ask them, hey, how long have your son been, you know, a
Right.
mentor
Right.
of this person, and how has
Yeah.
that been? How does your son feel about it? How do you feel about that person? You know what I mean? So you can do ask the questions, you can vet them out yourself also, you know, into finding that person. So that's why I say find the people that's already in position, the people that's already doing
That's
it,
good.
the people that's already taking out time with children and investing into these children, so that
Yeah.
you're not just picking somebody off the street and be like, oh, I think he'll be good. You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's
no,
good.
you know,
Yeah, that's
go with
good.
the people that's already doing the work, and that's half the battle right there.
Yeah. No, that's good. So we only have a few minutes left. So let's get into fulfill before we run out of time. So what does that mean? What does that look like?
So after you have dealt with your issues, right,
Mhm.
and went through the process of healing and have learned to heal, or is in the process of healing, then you could go into the part of your life of fulfilling. Because
Okay.
now that you've been healed, you're not moving from a place of hurt. So you're able to look at, okay, what do I want out of my life? What do I want? What are my desires? What are the things that I want to contribute not only to myself but into the world? And
Right.
from a healed place, you're able to move in that direction to bring those things to fruition, to actually fulfill your desires. And so even in the midst of my transition, like right when I said it those couple years ago, when I was going through the transition phase of finding who I was, God gave me a quote, right? And the quote is, pain births purpose. Purpose births progress, and progress is the evidence that God is at work.
Okay,
Right?
so say that again. Say that again, please.
Pain births purpose.
Okay.
Purpose births progress, and progress is the evidence that God is at work.
Amen.
And so God gave me that in the midst of me going through what I was going through, and so I can even I'll show you how it reflected in my life, right, even to this point. So again, at that time, I was going through my divorce, which was the pain. Okay, I'm going through this divorce, but in the midst of that pain, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? So in the midst of that pain is when I realized that I was connecting to fatherless daughters, and so out of that pain came the purpose. How can I help these fatherless daughters?
Yeah.
Which started me on that process of, you know, just going on Instagram and just having a conversation, you know, and pretty much was just me. I wasn't even talking to nobody at that time. I was just going on and giving this information. But then slowly the progress started.
Yeah.
So I got asked to be on the first podcast. Then I asked to be on the second one. Then now it's multiple podcasts that I've been on. Then having that conversation of, hey, I think you need to have your own podcast. And then me stepping into that space. Now, not only do I have that original podcast, I'm over 100 episodes, but now I have 2 other podcasts, and in the midst of helping other people start their own podcast. So you can see where it started with the pain.
Sure.
Then came the purpose. And then now the evidence, just years and years of one thing after another, and how God is laying it out, and you're seeing things being accomplished, and you know, my desires being fulfilled, not only for myself, but for the things that I want to bring into the world. And that's how you know you're on that right track to fulfillment, to doing what it is, because you're able to use that pain that you lived through, and God will show you how to change it to purpose, and then take that purpose and to fulfill your heart's desires.
Well, amen. We want to thank you for coming on the show, Ernest. A lot of great information. Folks, if you want to get more information and hear more about what Ernest is doing, go to dealhealfulfill.org. You can get more information about Ernest. Connect up with him. His email is there as well, Ernest James. You can look him up online. You can find him. Folks, it's been a great show, and we have a free ebook you can take advantage of on our website. We have a 15-minute love, a 5-minute or a 20-minute love assessment you can take on our website. Our goal is for you to become the most valuable partners in your relationship, because when you do that, if you're working to become the most valuable partner and your partner's working to become the most valuable partner together, now you have something. And, at the end of the day, if you're not having fun,
You're not doing it right.
So thank you guys. We'll see you on the next show.